Imagine there are two people. One person, whenever it rains outside or whenever they are going through something that is very difficult compared to what they've gone through in the previous years of their life. Now imagine that person, instead of either facing that fear or trying to solve the problem or trying to do something about the situation, they instead just cry about it. And they just cry about it, and that's all they do. They don't try to actually solve the situation and get rid of the problem like anybody should. And instead, they cope with it saying that it's not a big deal, or somebody else will fix it, or it's not my problem. And there's endless excuses that a human being can make. You can make endless excuses to not do something, and you can make also endless excuses to do something. There's endless no matter what. What it comes down to is your mindset. And imagine there is another man, someone who struggles. They go through pain. They might even go through more pain in ratio to the other person. And instead of crying about it, and instead of saying that it's not a big deal and who really cares, they don't make excuses not to solve the problem, but rather they make reasons to solve the problem, and they go and they fix the issue and they learn from it. They learn a lesson, they extract a lesson, and then not only have they just solved an issue in their life, but they've also learned from that issue in their life to never make that mistake again, or maybe to never make a different mistake ever. There's a bunch of things that you can learn from these difficulties that you go through and that you will go through at some point in your life. So, you can learn from pain and difficulty. Now, you might not understand this, but it was only just yesterday whenever I learned a new lesson just on this, and it was a lesson from Andrew Tate, and he said that there are still flowers in the desert. They still exist, but they have to learn to conserve water. They have to learn to deal with very low amounts of resources. And because of that, those flowers don't end up being large compared to those of which that are in the rainforest. Now in the rainforest, some flowers they take over on the ground, and some flowers take over and beat all the competition way up in the sky. But in the rainforest, there are infinitely more resources than in the desert. So if you compare the two in their specific situations, they might be equal. But if you take out the situation, if you take out the fact that there's limited resources, the flowers in the desert are no comparison at all to the flowers in the rainforest because they can grow as tall as probably 20 feet in the air, maybe even more. Whereas in the desert, they can't even get a foot tall because there's limited resources. And so you can learn from this because the flower in the desert is struggling to survive. But what you fail to see is the perception, where if you just go to the rainforest where it rains, you can grow as tall. And in this example, going to the rainforest is simply not leaving the problem behind, but fixing the problem and learning from it and not making that mistake again. Because a big mistake that a lot of people make is there will be a difficulty in their life. And God gave them that difficulty not to make them suffer, not to hurt them and destroy them, but to actually make them stronger. See, whenever you go to the gym, this is something that the gym has taught me. When you go to the gym, your goal, whether it's arm day, chest day, whatever, is to take a set to complete failure. Your goal is to lose, to achieve failure successfully. That is your goal in the gym. And once you achieve failure, you then recover, you learn from your lesson, and then you get stronger. And that's exactly what happens in every difficult moment. Because in a difficult moment, in a moment of uncertainty for what's going to happen, you're going to learn who you are as a person. And that's very important to learn. So if you smile in the storm, you're going to be happier when the storm is over. This might not make sense, and it might make sense, but I'm going to explain it either way so that you can have a deeper understanding of what this means. Let's say you're going through a struggling situation. Let's say you're in debt, or you're not making enough money to pay rent, or you owe people some money, etc. You owe money, you need money, and you're struggling financially. Now, let's say instead of crying about it, you say, okay, I made the mistake of not becoming financially successful. The lesson is I need to stop being lazy. And the way you deal with it, you say, okay, right now I'm not doing the best financially. So now let's go and find a online business model. Let's go get a job, start a business, make money, and then I can fix this problem. And the longer that you are poor, and I'm not saying you have to be okay with being poor, but the longer that you are poor, whenever you become rich, you're going to be happier being rich. I believe one of the best parts about being rich is that you were once poor. And so becoming financially successful at a young age, at 20, 21, 22, that sounds nice. But the issue with that, and there is actually an issue with that, is firstly, you haven't developed into a man yet. And whenever you become financially successful and you haven't developed into a man, or you haven't developed into the person that you want to be, it's a lot harder to change. And you'll likely have your weaknesses taken advantage of. So the best thing that you can do is learn as much at a young age and implement that into your life. Now the action steps of this video is to become aware of reality. And the reality is that there is no light without dark. Now let me explain what that means. Currently, there is a light on in my room. And if I flip that switch, there is now darkness. And darkness is simply the absence of light. So pain is simply the absence of peace, or whatever you want to call that. And so if you have joy, if you have happiness, there's also going to be pain in your life. Nobody has lived a life painless, not even Jesus. It says, actually, in fact, it's the shortest verse in the entire Bible. There's 36,000 verses. The shortest verse is Jesus wept. Even Jesus went through pain. He went through temptation. So there's never going to be a person ever that lives where they don't go through something difficult. And if you learn to embrace it, and if you learn to get something out of it, to extract the lesson that God has put there, you're going to